Brush off the clouds and cheer up. Put on a happy face. Take off the gloomy mask of tragedy. It's not your style. You look so good that you'll be glad you decided to smile. Pick out a pleasant outlook. Stick out the nose chin. Wipe off that full of down look. Slap on a happy grin. Spread sunshine all over the place. Just put on a happy face. Gray skies are gonna cheer up. Put on a happy face. Brush off the clouds and cheer up. Put on a happy face. Take off the gloomy mask of tragedy. It's not your style. You look so good that you'll be glad you decided to smile. Pick out a pleasant outlook. Stick out that nose chin. Wipe off that full of down look. Slap on a happy grin. Spread sunshine all over the place. Just put on a happy face.
Thank you, Omnitones. That was wonderful. Just a reminder to turn off your cell phones or put them on silent, if you will, so they don't disturb the service. And more smiles today. Our reader is Bob Brooks. And of course, we have the Omnitones, as you all know, talk about putting on a happy face.
If your face isn't happy, it's not our fault. Good morning.
Good morning, Bob.
This is from Richard Rohr's book, Essential Teachings in Love. And the Bible verses are his choice. And pardon me for reading this because his cadence doesn't seem to match my cadence. So, searching for and rediscovering the true self is the fundamental basis, the essential task that will gradually open us to receiving and giving love to God, others, and ourselves, and thus to live truly just lives. Grace builds on nature. It does not avoid or destroy nature. You are created in the space of God, in the image of God, from the very beginning. Genesis 1st chapter, verse 26 and 27. Then God said, "Let us make humankind in our image, according to our likeness, and let them have dominion over the fish of the sea, and over the birds of the air, and over the cattle, and over all the wild animals of the earth, and over every creeping thing that creeps upon the earth." Verse 27, so God created humankind in his image. In the image of God, he created them. Male and female, he created them. This is the basis for God's justice. Since everyone is made in the image of God, then we need to recognize, honor, and respect the image of God in everyone, no exceptions. You and every other creation of God begin with your unique divine DNA, an inner destiny, as it were, an absolute core that knows the truth about you a true believer tucked away in the cellar of your being, and an image of God that begs to be allowed to be fulfilled and to show itself. You were chosen in Christ before the world was made to stand before God in love, marked out beforehand as fully adopted sons and daughters. This is your true self or soul. Ephesians chapter 1, verse 4 and 5, just as he chose us in Christ before the foundation of the world to be holy and blameless before him in love, he destined us for adoption as his children through Jesus Christ, according to the good pleasure of his will. Jesus revealed and accepted a paradox. Human and divine are not separate but one. Why do we resist this destiny? For most of us, this seems just too good and too dangerous to be true. There is so much contrary evidence. Are we afraid to bear the burden of divinity? It is precisely the divine part of you that is great enough, deep enough, gracious enough to fully accept the human part of you. If you are merely human, you will tend to reject your embarrassingly limited humanity. Maybe we realize subconsciously that if we really recognized our true self, which is the divine indwelling, the Holy Spirit within us, if we really believe that we are temples of God, then we would have to live up to this incredible dignity, freedom, and love. 1 Corinthians chapter 3, verse 16, do you not know that you are God's temple and that God's Spirit dwells in you? Chapter 6, verse 19, for the wisdom of this world is foolishness with God. For it is written, he catches the wise in their craftiness. And 2 Corinthians chapter 6, 16, what agreement has the temple of God with the idols? For we are the temple of the living God. As God said, I will live in them and walk among them, and I will be their God, and they shall be my people. Paradoxically, immense humility, not arrogance, characterizes the true self. You simultaneously know you are a son or daughter of God, but you also know that you didn't earn it and you're not worthy of it. You know entirely it's a gift. All you can do is thank somebody else, occasionally weep with joy, and kneel without any hesitation. Ephesians chapter 2, verses 8 and 9, for by grace you have been saved through faith, and this is not your own doing, it is the gift of God, not the result of works, so that no one may boast. The single and true purpose of mature religion is to lead you to ever new experiences of your true self. If religion does not do this, it is junk religion. Every sacrament, every Bible story, every church service, every sermon, every hymn, every bit of priesthood, ministry, liturgy is for one purpose, to allow you to experience your true self, who you are in God and who God is in you, and to live a generous and just life from that infinite source. Thank you.
Thank you, Bob. Our first hymn will be number 69, Awake My Soul, and we'll sing all three verses. Number 69, Awake My Soul, and we'll sing all three verses.
Free.
Instead of a Bible verse this morning, I'm going to share with you an affirmation by Nona Brooks. For the sun and the rain, the storm and the calm, we thank thee. For sunshine and darkness, we thank thee. For every experience of life, we thank thee. For what we are, we thank thee. For what we can give, we thank thee. For the good that we can do, we thank thee. For the love that we are, for the life that we know, we thank thee. For all that is, we thank thee. For all that is. And certainly there are some things among all the things that are that we don't thank him for. And yet, it's a habit we have to create. It is something that we need to do despite how we might feel about something. We have to give thanks because we know that the author of all good cannot create that which is evil. It might look that way, it might seem that way for a period of time, but through it will come blessing. Through it will come abundance and good. Through it will come greater understanding. Trust. We have to trust the process. We have to trust this omnipresent force that is so powerful, so good, so beautiful and generous and understanding and loving. We have to trust it. And when we do, we shed so much worry and anxiety and tension. We are healthier and happier with trust. No. Let's trust. The Bible says it all the time. Trust in the Lord, over and over. Trust. Trust that perfect nature. Trust that loving presence. Trust the God that loves you.
We recite the statement of being together. We kind of forgot that. We'll do that. Brad, let me.
I'm sorry.
Comes out here. Keep
Okay.
going. Stay
God is all, both invisible and visible. One presence, one mind, one power is all. This one that is all is perfect life, perfect love, and perfect substance. I am the individualized expression of God and am ever one with this perfect life, perfect love, and perfect substance. Thank you.
We picked a couple of songs this morning that were made popular in the 1970s by the rock group Three Dog Night. And I thought you knew that. And this is probably one of their easiest, most mellow songs they did. It's a song about the need to get out to the country sometime to leave the hustle and bustle of everyday life behind. And the chord structure and the rhythm of the song kind of reminds you of taking a stroll out in the country. And that is why it is called Out in the Country. 1, 2, 3, 4.
Whenever I need to leave it all rivers like to run. I stand alone and take back something worth remembering.
Time for our healing meditation. Time to get still. Sometimes life is so busy that it's hard to make time for stillness, for being, for relaxing in the presence, for knowing your own nature as goodness, as life, as love, as creativity, and the capacity to give such blessings to others. As we still ourselves, we allow the world to move away. Scan ourselves and make sure that there aren't any tensions anywhere. Sometimes our shoulders are up around our ears, or feel tension in our backs. But now we release these places deliberately and allow ourselves to move deeper and deeper into that vast inner world where memories are stored, where landscapes are remembered, where events come forcefully back to us. But we move past them. We move past to those pastoral, peaceful places where we can simply be and know that all is well. All is in divine order, whether it seems like it or not. All is a blessing, whether it looks like a curse or something very good. God reigns. Good reigns. Because we can't always see it means nothing. Let's tune into that harmony, that peace, that flow of life that never ends, that is right here, right now, filling you, surrounding you, supporting you, if you permit it, guiding, again, if you permit it, but always, always loving, always seeing what He created in you, that perfection, that good. I have in my hand the names of those who do not see the perfection surrounding them. But together we affirm for all those people who are on our Valley Community Church prayer list that balance, that understanding, blessing that doesn't seem to be present is manifest in their lives. The good is there, hidden, but there, because God is there. What a blessing to know. What a blessing to relax into. What a privilege to understand what good we spread when we are cheerful because we know the truth. How wonderful our smiles are because they bless other people, and something of our attitude is communicated through the ethers to them, and life is a little brighter. Whenever we do these things, whenever we know that God reigns in our lives, we are blessing both ourselves and everyone around us. Blessing our community, blessing our city, our country, our world. Because everything is connected. Our consciousness can raise the consciousness of all those whom we know, we meet, we pass in the street. Just knowing that God and good reign lifts and blesses ourselves and everyone else. In the 90 seconds of silence that we're going to have right now, let us lift our minds, lift our thoughts, lift our consciousness to that realization of how much we are loved, how much we are helped, how good life is, how blessed life is. Look a little deeper and realize it right now. Come unto me, all ye who labor and are heavy laden, and I will give you rest. Jesus spoke the words, but it was God communicating through him to each one of us that when life gets heavy, we can rest in him and be assured of present and future. There is no need for worry. Only trust. Only trust. For this and everything life holds, beloved Father, we give thanks. Amen. And shall we say the affirmative Lord's Prayer together? Our Father, which art in heaven, hallowed is thy name. Thy kingdom is come, thy will is done on earth as it is in heaven. Thou givest us this day our daily bread. Thou forgivest us our trespasses, as we forgive those who trespass against us. Thou leadest us not into temptation, but dost deliver us from all evil. For thine is the kingdom, and the power, and the glory forever and ever. Amen. Well, you know, I had something totally different in mind that I was going to be speaking about this morning, but then I had to change my mind. It seemed to be something that I had to speak about because I had to hear it, or maybe somebody here had to hear it, I don't know. But today I'm going to be speaking about obedience. There are some of us who don't particularly like that word. It's way too reminiscent of being a kid and having to do something you didn't like doing, or you wanted to avoid at all costs. And the question was, well, why? Because I said so. Of course, you have to raise a child with certain rules. You have to tell them about the rules of the house. You have to tell them about how to behave at school or at church, and how to play with their friends. So they learn that pretty quick too. They're rules though. They're unspoken rules many times, but there are definite rules. And they have to be obeyed or you get into a lot of trouble. People get real mad at you and it gets scary and painful if you disobey. You have to be obedient sometimes. Now, there are certain rules, and people call them laws, physical laws. And we are forced to obey these laws, like the law of gravity. You make a misstep, and you lose your balance, and gravity takes over, and it can be mighty painful. Now, we deliberately do not mix electricity and water because we have found that what results is not good at all. And there's so many physical laws that have been proved true through countless experiments. And they're not just true for us on Earth, but they have found that these same laws hold in halfway across the galaxy. They seem to be universal laws. And like the laws of optics and thermodynamics and geophysics and electromagnetism and chemistry and quantum physics and on and on and on it goes. These are laws that, whether we know it or not, are affecting us all the time. They impact our lives in more ways than we can imagine. And as a matter of fact, modern society is based on our having had to learn and obey and then know enough to utilize these physical laws. But obedience to physical laws is just the beginning of things. From our earliest history as a species, we've been adhering to social laws and to religious laws. Laws about how you should interact with your society, with the people around you, and especially what you have to do to please or avoid displeasing whatever God your social group believed in, where you'd been raised. Now, Western society is pretty largely based on Judeo-Christian rules. That is, the 10 rules that Moses received from Yahweh on Mount Sinai. And we all know them. They're very, very familiar. The first 3 commandments address what we're supposed to think about and how we're supposed to behave to Yahweh, God. And the first commandment is, do not worship or bow to any other god. Just Jehovah, that's all. And furthermore, you don't make any pictures or statues of Jehovah. You don't make any, quote, graven images of him. That was to limit him, to form, and he was an unseen God. Jehovah is unlimited, not limited to a picture or a statue. He was an unlimited God in power and authority. But if you disobeyed him, watch out, because he would punish you. Yeah. And by the way, he is definitely a masculine deity, definitely. Now, his second commandment was, do not misuse his name. Apparently, there was a lot of swearing that was going on back then, both interpersonally and especially in commerce. You know, it was barter that went on, and apparently his name was used quite a bit more than it should be. It should never be used except in respect. Yeah. Again, God would punish you if you broke this law, this commandment. And the third was, everybody had to rest on the 7th day of the week. God worked for 6 days and then he rested. Well, people had to do the same. And it wasn't just the man of the family, the head of the family, that rested. Everybody had to rest. The women and the children and the servants and the slaves and the hired people, and if you had a guest, and even the strangers that happened to be in your home, everybody rested on this 7th day, which was holy day. It was devoted to Yahweh. Okay, those are the first 3. Then the other 7 commandments were focused on rules to preserve the social bond, the cohesiveness of this group of people. To routinely, and wantonly break these rules would simply tear a society apart. And above all, this group of former slaves needed to stay unified. They needed each other in order to survive as a people. The other commandments, and you know them very well, were to honor, to respect your parents. Then there was, don't commit murder, that's 5. Or adultery, that's number 6. Don't steal, 7. Don't lie, false trespasses. And finally, you must not be jealous or envious, that's 9 and 10. You can't be jealous of somebody else's family, their daughters or their slaves or their possessions. That's a very important rule, because it was, if you continued being jealous and envious, it would lead you to break some of the other rules. Yeah. That was just the main commandments, though, these 10. But then in Exodus, there were 2 more chapters of commandments that had to be carried out. And they were exhaustive. They covered everything you could think of. 2 whole chapters, in addition to these 10. But it was, in the final analysis, the fear of Jehovah's punishment that kept these people in line. Now, different religious groups groups down through the centuries, and certainly the modern ones, have all insisted on these 10 commandments, plus some other very hard and fast rules. Some religious groups are vegetarians. Others forbid dancing. Still others insist on dressing a certain way. You have to wear this special kind of dress. There are those who are required to say a certain number of prayers each day. And there are those also who forbid the use of alcohol in any way. And certainly that was the deep, deep belief of a preacher who was delivering a Sunday morning service. He was talking about temperance. And he said dramatically, if I had all the beer in the world, I would throw it in the river. And then he warmed to the subject. He said, if I had all the wine in the world, I would throw it in the river. And then he really got excited and he started thundering, if I had all the whiskey in the whole world, I would throw it in the river. And then he sat down. And the song leader stood up rather slowly, trying to suppress a smile. And he said, our closing hymn is number 365. Please stand. And let's all sing together, shall we gather at the river? That was his deep belief. But no matter what behavior are prescribed by a religious group, whether it happens to be no meat, no dancing, no alcohol, certain prayers, certain dress, etc., all of them all have the stick. If you don't believe what we tell you to believe, if you don't do what we tell you to do, you're going to suffer forever. I don't know exactly how many people there are in divine science, or if we added all the people who believed in new thought in the world, but I dare say that we are perhaps 0.5% or less of the people in the world who believe this way. But I believe we are the vanguard. I believe we are ahead of our time. We are the forerunners of what the rest of the world will one day believe. You know, everybody believed at one time that the earth was flat. Nobody believes it now. I believe this because science is gradually proving the truth of what we say and what the great mystics down through the ages have said, and that is, there is only one presence. And we are all part of this one divine presence. It is one force and only one force, and while it is called by many names, it is but one. People call it universal consciousness. They say mind with capital M. Energy, power, intelligence, creative action, and on and on. But in divine science we call it omnipresence, and it is one. We describe the nature of God as different as night and day from the God that is described in the Old Testament. This divine force has never, can never be angry, vengeful, jealous, unmerciful, or punitive. Never. We agree with the mystic who wrote 1 John, the book of the Bible in the New Testament, who said, God is love. And he that dwelleth in love dwelleth in God, and God in him. God is love. That is his nature. God's nature is all good. God's nature is perfection. It says in Genesis 1:26, and I repeat this ad nauseum, but I need to remind myself. We have inherited in our most basic nature, in our soul nature, what He is. Everything about Him. We are loving, peaceful, powerful, one with life, one with joy, understanding, truth, knowledge, good, and on and on. We are worthy. We are absolutely worthy because we are God's child. There is this one presence, and we all live and move and have our being in Him. Thank you, Paul. Thank you. No. No, of course not. We don't believe that this universal creative energy is male, that God has no gender. But today I'm supposed to be talking about obedience. Now, what does the God that we believe in ask of us? What do we have to do? What do we have to do to obey the essence of love? Nothing. Nothing. The only one we have to obey is ourselves. Now, in a moment, I'm going to explain what I mean by that. But in the meantime, I have to explain that divine science talks not just about the Ten Commandments, and we really don't have other laws that you have to do, but we talk about universal spiritual laws, and they go much deeper than just 10 Commandments. What we have to know is that the very first universal law is, again, the law of oneness of force. And that's described in Deuteronomy, the book of Deuteronomy. And it's, "Hear, O Israel, the Lord our God is one Lord." It's all inclusive, all encompassing. Or as Melinda Kramer has said, God is creator, creative action, and creation. All at once, all at once. And that is all there is. There is this one. And the next universal law that we often talk about is the law of expression, which is like produces like, or that which is born of spirit is spirit. Yeah. Now that's from John, book of John. And this law perfectly describes what we are. We are eternal spiritual beings created by an eternal universal spiritual being. Still another of these universal spiritual laws is the law of attraction, or like attracts like. Now, the law of expression was like produces like, but the law of attraction is like attracts like. And another way to state this law is what you sow, you reap. You attract what you sow. You give good, and good is going to come back to you. Bank on it. Now, this also includes the law of tenfold return that Jesus talked about in the book of Luke. Give, and it shall be given to you. Good measure, pressed down and shaken together and running over. You give, and you will attract ever more good to you. And then we have this lovely law of growth and unfoldment. That's so encouraging. That feels so good because it refers to the inevitable growth and unfoldment of the powers and the possibilities within every one of us. We are expressing it more and more. God's image in us. Oh, there are lots more laws. Well, a number more anyway. But the last universal law that I really have time to talk about this morning is the law of love. It's indeed the fulfilling of the law. That too comes from the Bible, Romans, the 13th chapter. God is love. God is love, and as we express that central quality of our being, we fulfill every law. Be loving, and everything is taken care of. And people have said, love God, do what you like. If you love God, you're going to do the right thing. Now, do we say you have to absolutely obey these laws? No. Nothing of the kind. We don't say that. Will God stop loving you if you don't obey? No, absolutely not. He loves you unconditionally, no matter what you do or don't do. We talk about universal laws in our church, but we always say, hey, don't believe me. You try them. Let their truth, let their value prove themselves to you, or discard them. But give them a try. Universal laws are methods of living life more happily, more healthily, more successfully, with greater abundance and a greater ability to be creative, and it attracts to you greater and greater good. Furthermore, you cooperate with universal law, and it eventually will lead to your indescribable experience of the joy of God's own being. To know that, to feel His presence, to know His overwhelming love for you. So, to whom do you owe obedience? To yourself. To that still small voice in you that urges you to love. And that means to look for the good. To look for the good in every single person who comes to your consciousness. But you start with yourself. You see the good within you, or you can't see it in anybody else. See the good within yourself. Make it a practice to give yourself a pat on the back. First, you love yourself. Then you love God. And then you celebrate the good in everybody else, because you know it's there. You have to keep looking for it until you find it. And that is the fulfilling of every law. Let's go within. Obedience. Not the nicest word, kind of heavy, but very useful. Very useful to accept that this is something we have to ask ourselves about. What am I being obedient to? Certain habits that are not very good for me. Maybe attachment to certain people who really don't help me. Or certain situations or conditions. What am I obedient to? And could I become more obedient to that within me that knows where and what I must do, how I can be a conduit of God's love? Important questions. And what is it that prompts the question? That still small voice within that is God's image, always nudging us in the right direction. Oh Father, oh beloved one, O Divine Mother, O friend, O companion, O mentor, O guide, thank you. Thank you for everything. Amen.
The Three Dog Night Band had another hit with this song that is based on a mystical paradise that the Tibetan Buddhists believe in. This place they call Shambhala is said to be a land of perfection, peace, and enlightenment. And as we brought the word Shambhala into the Western culture, we talk about it not so much in terms of a place, but as a spiritual path that one might be on. In fact, we've created Shambhala bracelets. And this morning, the Omnitones are all sporting their own individual Shambhala bracelet. And the bracelets were worn for spiritual reasons. Each color of the stone, type of stone, is something you might want to focus on from a spiritual perspective. As an example, Stephanie and Rick are sporting very stylish Shambhala bracelets with a green colored hue stone. And the green would be associated with the heart chakra, which would lend itself, like nature, to harmony, renewal, growth, forgiveness. Now, as they tried to put the lyrics to this song together, it was hard to pronounce the word Shambhala and get the same beat of this song. So they changed it a little bit to Shambhala. Now, I got a feeling that most of you in this room know this song, and those of you who don't will know it by the end. And we would just so appreciate that when we get to that chorus part that everybody used to howl at when they got to their car in the 1970s with the window down, we would really love, in celebration of all of our spiritual paths, and most importantly, our belief in oneness, that we sing this as one when we get to this end of this thing. Just belt it out. We don't care what it sounds like, just loud. Ready, guys?
Wash away my troubles, wash away my pain with the rain in Shambhala. Wash away my sorrow, wash away my shame with the rain in Shambhala. Oh, yeah, 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 yeah. Oh, yeah, 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 yeah. Everyone is helpful. light shine in the halls of Shambhala? Tell me, how does your light shine in the halls of Shambhala? Tell me, how does your light shine in the halls of Shambhala? Shine in the halls of Shambhala. Ah, yeah.
Please put that one in your repertoire songs. Now's the time for the blessing of the gifts. Let's say together, you'll find it in the orders of your service. Today, I acknowledge God, omnipresent, as the source of all good, as the source of my good. With this acknowledgement, I accept His will, which is abundance in every aspect of my life. I release all thoughts of lack and limitation, and I am open and receptive to the increased flow of abundance to me right now. I joyfully accept the gifts of life and give freely of the special gift that I am. Through me, God omnipresent blesses and multiplies this gift for all. Thank you, dear God.
We just have a few prayer requests, but thank you for taking one and blessing yourself as well as the person whose name you whatever you want to keep on playing. We're at Keep on.
Oh, thank you, Omnitones, for great music, as always. Just don't even know what to say. It's just great. Short announcements. For the last couple of weeks, you've had the this little flyer in the early service, and it was the people that donated in honor of their parents. If you have not given the money that you was going to donate tomorrow, please do so as soon as you can. We appreciate the ones that did that. We also appreciate the fact that you bought pictures of your parents and put them in there and displayed them for the last 6 weeks, and it was fun trying to figure out. Some of them we didn't know. We had asked last week, so it was very nice to have them in there. So we're going to do something else later on in the year. So dig out your baby pictures, and so we're going to have baby pictures of you all, and we're going to try to figure out who they are. But that'll be one of our game nights probably. But anyhow, we appreciate the fact that you bought your pictures and shared. It was very interesting, and we appreciate that. This coming Saturday night, we're going to be having our 4th of July party at 6 o'clock. I don't know if it's going to be inside or outside. I guess it's going to depend on the weather. But anyhow, Bob Dieter is making barbecue, but we will have vegetarian stuff for whoever wants vegetarian. We ask that everybody bring, we'll have the barbecue and the buns and all that, but we ask people bring a dish to celebrate. And we're going to celebrate the 4th of July early. So. Also, let's see, next Sunday, after the service, after our regular service, we will have a memorial and remembrance service at the columbarium. Probably start probably about 20 minutes after the service or something. Okay. And so that will be at the columbarium after the service. This week's flowers are sponsored by Laurel in memory of her father's birthday. Did you have anything? Okay.
Our final hymn will be number 53, You'll Never Walk Alone, and we'll sing that all the way through. Number 53, You'll Never Walk Alone, we'll sing it all the way through.
We are separate, and yet we are one. Spiritually, we are one. We are separate minds, and yet we carry within us that idea, that realization that we are one with God, that we are one with Him at all times in our lives, especially those moments that are difficult, that challenge us. We are one with Him in joy, in illness, in health, in every good, and those things we think of as not good. He is our source. He is the way we can approach life and know that we can triumph within it. Triumphant living. That is our destiny. Thank you, dear God. Amen.
Amen.